Hello, I am Shane Brinkman-Davis-Delamore, and this is Code and Optimism, a show where we explore how to solve problems faster with software. I've been thinking a lot, particularly since the episode a little bit ago, about finding the essential problem and that grain of sand at the center of your pearl, that kernel that all the rest of your effort is structured around, and really understanding that essential problem. I've been thinking about the essential problem of this show, Code and Optimism. And as I just stated, I have this sort of opening phrase of solving problems faster with software. And I think that I got that pretty close to what I want it to be. But I've been thinking a lot about what does that mean? And so in this episode, I'm going to try to break that out a little bit because, again, I'm a very hierarchical thinker. I want to tie everything up to the top level of this tree. Like, what is that essential part? What is that kernel that everything else has to tie back to? Because I want everything else on this program to tie back to that essential purpose so that we can stay on target and really achieve the goals. So I'm going to break this apart a little bit, do it word by word. So solving problems faster with software. So first I'm going to look at solving problems. And let's start with the word problems. Problems mean something that has pain to it. It has some sense of loss. It is incurring some type of negative gain, some type of problem. That's how we use it. And really, when I say the word problems, which I adapted from David Deutsch in his statement that optimism is an explanation of past failures, in that we could have solved that problem if we had enough knowledge. That's the way he stated optimism. And as you know, as my tagline at the end of these episodes is, I adapted that slightly to be all problems are solvable with enough knowledge. So I like problems. I think it's a good word for it, but it's a little too narrow. I'm going to call what I'm really more interested in is opportunities. Opportunities to make things better. Whatever that is. That's a lot of hand wavy there. That's values, and everybody has different values. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. But an opportunity to make things better based on people's values. And when I think of a problem, the phrase that comes to mind compared to opportunities is a problem is an acute opportunity. It's painful. It has an acute, it is sharp, it is precise, it is felt. But there's another kind of problem which we don't always label as a problem, but it is the situation where everybody is actually still impacted negatively. There's still sort of like this negative impact, but everybody has forgotten that it exists. And Tony Fadell,
for example,
did a TED Talk on
see this piece of fruit?
Where he was
see this little sticker?
A piece of fruit and the little stupid stickers on
that sticker wasn't there when I was a kid.
Stickers were created to solve another problem.
But somewhere as the years passed, someone had the bright idea to put that sticker on the fruit.
In order to
Why?
eat the thing, you have to
so it could be
peel off
easier
the sticker,
nails.
and you inevitably
damaging
eat
the
residue on the
flesh.
fruit, or you damage
That
the
rolling
flesh
up
of the
that
fruit.
sticker, you know
And
what
it's
I mean?
frustrating that it sticks
And
to
then
your
trying to
fingers.
flick it off your finger.
That is a problem that most
Right?
people think of as a problem because we just got used to it.
It's not fun. It's not fun. Not at all. But something interesting happened. By the 100th time, at least for me, I became numb to it. I simply picked up the piece of fruit, dug at it with my nails, tried to flick it off, and then wonder, was there another sticker?
So there's those layers. But then there's also sort of these pure positive opportunities, which just seem like we aren't having a negative thing happen to us, but there's an opportunity to make things better. I kind of want to think about all of that when I'm talking about this, and I'm going to continue to use the word problems, but I really mean that full range of either things that have rather very strong negative consequences that we want to reduce, or maybe very tiny negative consequences across millions or billions of people that we've forgotten even exists, or those sort of pure positive opportunities. So that's problems. The whole goal is to make life better for people as they individually value it. So solving problems is where I think things start to get really interesting here. So what does it mean to solve a problem? And that is an interesting question. What I think of for solving a problem isn't just that we, figure out a different kind of way to label fruit so that it still achieves the original goal of being easy to check out, but isn't an annoying thing that you have to remove. Maybe it's using ML image recognition that's really good, and you can just put the fruit underneath the scanner and it can tell if that's an organic apple or if that's a normal apple, and it can ring up the right price. Great. But what I want to know is that's not a solution. That is part of a solution. A solution is actually all the way through to execution. Are we able to get to a solution that is economically viable? Now, not all problems need to be viewed from the economic viable perspective, but it does need to be through to completion. Like, we've built this whole solution, we've gotten through it, we've delivered it, and is it now net better? And I think net better is really the key thing. So there's some amount of costs around bringing this solution to realization. First, you have to figure out what could solve it in the first place. Then you have to figure out, could we build it? And then you have to figure out, could that built thing then become viable at large when you use it? And sometimes it's an instance of one. Like, sometimes you only need to do it once. You only need to use it once and it becomes a viable solution. But so many things we talk about in the software world is really, is it going to be economically viable across a large enough audience? And so when I say solve a problem, I mean that. I mean total net positive ROI. And I guess an ROI doesn't have to be dollars and cents. It can be other metrics, but you have to measure all cost over all value. And the value has to be greater than the cost. I've been sort of teasing that apart. I think I'm going to do a whole nother episode on that, because there's about a dozen or so nodes in that network of coming to that conclusion that you actually have a solution that meets that overall net positive ROI. So that's solving problems. Now, moving on to faster. Now, why do we use the word faster? Certainly, there is a time to market, and that really matters in terms of you versus the competition. And you personally, who wants to win in that you versus the competition scenario. You, me, whoever this individual is, this group that's working on this project. And that matters to them. But to society at large, whether or not one person, one team or the other gets there is a little immaterial, because we just want the solution, right? We want a real solution to the problem. And given that, faster is in sort of wall clock time is not really what I'm most interested in. I'm certainly interested in, I want to win too. I want to be successful. I want to get to market. But what I'm more interested in is faster from the point of view of cost. Building software, the primary cost is designer, developer, management time. It is the time it takes to take this kernel of an idea and transform it into a product and all of the logistics around that product to bring it to the world. And very simply, a very large part of that cost is actually just developer time and perhaps design and product time. All that together, it's why I say faster. And it really comes from personal experience. My motivation for this show, my motivation for much of my career has been, I realized very early on when I was still a teenager that I could write any piece of software. I became quite confident that anything anyone's ever written, I could figure out how to write. I didn't know how to, but I knew the path to figuring out how to. But I didn't have enough time in the day to build all the bits of software I wanted to build. I had way more ideas than time in the day to build it. So I have dedicated a substantial slice of my career to figuring out how I can solve problems faster, because I have so many problems I want to solve. But faster isn't really about speed. At the key of it, it's actually about cutting down the cost on that net ROI equation of solving. I want to have it cost less to get to that solution. And cost is dominated by time. But here's the important thing. If we make things cost less, not only does it allow us to have a bigger ROI, which might be the first thought on that, but what I think is much more interesting is that it takes things which would have had a negative ROI at the margins, they're close, but they didn't quite have the worthwhile to do it. And if you decrease the cost, that all of a sudden it can have a positive ROI. What I am really interested in overall, I think the most exciting thing, is those opportunities for problems that we can't currently solve because there's not a positive ROI on them, and shifting that cost equation. So all of a sudden there is a positive ROI. How many new problems can we open up as possible things we can solve because we have decreased the cost of solving problems? That is what excites me. I think there's a huge amount of problems out there, even problems from the dawn of civilization, that now have the opportunity to be solved, or at least solved better than they have ever been solved, with the tools that we're working with. That's what I mean by faster. That's what gets me excited. And last, software. Solving with software. And why software? Well, obviously I'm a software engineer. Obviously you're here too because you're interested in software, you're in the field. But it's more than that. I have a belief that software is the most powerful tool ever created by humanity. But why is it the most powerful tool ever created by humanity? And really it comes down to I think the David Deutsch work has definitely influenced my thinking and refined it a bit, but he has this definition of knowledge, which is knowledge is information with causal powers. And to me, that is synonymous with software in like the big definition of software. So in the small definition, software is code that we can type in that can then go into these physical machines we have created that we call computers. And then that machine can execute that code and deliver some valuable information processing, which then can impact the world, right? That's what we mean software in kind of the lowercase s software way. But that is just what our current level of knowledge is about software. That's just our current level of technology to this bigger thing, software with a capital S, which is knowledge, directly equivalent. I believe it is the same thing. And David Deutsch points out that knowledge is DNA. Knowledge is ourselves, our humanity, our person in our brain, and whatever else makes that work. We don't really understand it, but it is ultimately knowledge. And in fact, the organization of the universe, the organization of solar systems, the organization of matter, those are various levels of knowledge. And all of that, in my opinion, is software. It's the same thing. Now, our ability to manipulate that knowledge is limited by our current level of knowledge. And right now, that mostly means software with the lowercase s. But I am interested in pushing software with a lowercase s towards that grander aspect of software with the uppercase s. So I really mean that whole enterprise of all information systems. And here's where I'll sort of introduce my terms. So his definition is knowledge is information with causal powers. That is good, very good actually, but it's not quite as pithy as I like. I had actually previously come to the term that I think is enriched with his definition, but my definition was information in motion. And I like thinking about it as information in motion. It's a little different from Newtonian motion in the sense that once it's in motion, it'll stay in motion. It's information changing over time. It is the transformation of information over time. And that is, I think, the crux of software is the transformation of information. We are in the business of transforming information, and the way we transform information is itself information, which makes it a meta-recursive, exponentially growing process, which gets me super excited. So solving problems faster with software has this broader scope. Actually solving means positive ROI across the entire equation. It matters. And problems are not just problems, they're opportunities. And if we put those two things together, I could have said realizing opportunities, because realizing I think gets closer to realizing ROI, like actually capturing the opportunity. You know, again, we might have the small concept of a solution, which is like, well, technically it can do the job, but in practice it doesn't work, right? That's not realizing an opportunity. That's coming up with a solution to part of the problem, but not the overall problem. So realizing opportunities is what I could have said for this. And when I say faster, I really mean cheaper in some sense, but I really want to emphasize the key thing, which is it allows us to do things we could never do before. So I could have said that whole first phrase as realizing vastly more opportunities cheaper. And with software, again, software in a capital software sense is synonymous with knowledge. And we are going to be using our current level of knowledge, but we are also creating new knowledge. So overall, I could have said realizing vastly more opportunities cheaper by using and generating knowledge. That's really what I mean with this shorter sentence of solving problems faster with software, is We're going to use our knowledge. We're going to build upon it at the top of the pile. There's many different ways we can use knowledge and generate knowledge. That's really what we are doing as human beings throughout our entire lives. But I want to stand on the top of the tallest pile of knowledge that we can and reach for the stars as far as we can with that knowledge to allow us to realize new opportunities vastly more than we ever could before with this cool technology called software. I hope that gets you excited too. That gets me excited. I'm going to be talking some more in future episodes a bit about what is available right now for actually doing the faster, cheaper aspect of this. How do we do software faster, cheaper? I think there's 4 major trends. We're going to talk a bit about that in the next episode. Another episode, maybe not the next one. Also, I'm going to be talking about what does it actually take to determine if we actually have solved the problem in the sense of total overall net ROI. It's not trivial, but it's not too complicated either. But we often forget many steps there, and then we get to the end of the process and we haven't actually solved it. You've heard me say in previous episodes that I think 90% of software should never have been written. And I mean that in the sense of it never achieved total net overall positive ROI. And we can solve that problem. You just need to check all the boxes at the beginning of your project and throughout, because projects evolve, to make sure that you're still tracking net positive overall ROI. So lots of fun stuff here. I know this is very high level, but I keep wanting to come back to the root, that kernel, that essential problem, and making sure that all the rest of the stuff we're looking at stems back to that to make sure we're staying on track. So once again, thank you for spending your valuable time with me. And remember, all problems, all of them, are solvable with enough knowledge.